Right, I'm gonna actually.
Don't worry, Mike. It was a half
now.
out of all of our lives, so we all shared it together.
Yeah, it wasn't good for anybody.
I enjoyed hearing you talk, Matt, though. I said, gee, I am really irrelevant to this whole process. I genuinely, you're a much better guest than I am. So, hi, it's good to finally be here. Thanks for coping.
Hey, thank you for your patience. Sorry, this is a nightmare that, of course, this always has to happen when we have somebody as prestigious as yourself on the show. It couldn't have just been like my friend Dan that was on last week. I would have been happy to put them through hell. But no, you with, your valuable time and shit, that's the guest that we have to have problems with.
Is this part of the broadcast?
Yeah, absolutely. This is part of the broadcast at this point.
No, because I'll get into a little rant on this, which
Do
is...
it. Rant.
This is the thing during lockdown is you can't say no to anything. You can't. Everybody's saying, will you do this? Will you do that? And you can't pretend you don't have time. Everyone's got tons of time. So I love you guys. I've talked to you a couple of times before, right?
We had a great time when you were on our other show, Best Darn Diddley. You reviewed the Sherry Bobbins episode of The Simpsons with us, and then we also talked about A Star is Burns with the critic.
Classic.
So that's it. You guys are fun. You guys are fans. It's great to talk to you. I got to say, I'm going to get way off topic. Matt, when we did Springfield Confidential, he hooked me up with some of the shittiest podcasts ever heard. It was like the only prerequisite for a Mike Klickstein recommendation was there had to be a barking dog in the background. But so
shameless self-promoter.
I like you guys, and that's great. But what's been happening, every time I get an invitation to a podcast, it's never Skype, it's never Zoom, it's not the phone anymore. So talk on Platinum Plus. Okay, this one. And tomorrow, I'm giving a talk at the Mark Twain House, and people are paying $75 a head for this goddamn speech, and I know it's not going to work. And it's yet another service, and we've had days of dry runs. They never work. It's like, well, we got this great technology. Everyone knows how to use it. Let's abandon it. Okay, that's my rant. I'm sorry.
No, and again, we can't thank you enough for taking your time to be here. And if it softens the blow even a little bit, they recently came out with a top 20 list of Simpsons podcasts, and we were nowhere on it. So you don't have to worry about
it. You need that barking dog, boy.
I'm telling you, man, we're losing it.
Miles, do you know how many there are total?
Oh God,
does anyone know?
Too many. There's probably 20 in the state of Texas alone.
Wow.
Just it's now I don't know how many of those have done 2 episodes and have been like, oh, this is hard. I'm not going to do it anymore. But we just hit episode 200 this week, actually.
Right.
So we've been doing it for 4 years straight now. And,
Jeez, that's
now that, so the Get Vocal situation, and just to be clear, I am in no way saying anything disparaging about at Get Vocal. You guys can say whatever you want.
We love that.
I am very happy with my slot over there, but to your opinion is your opinion, man.
That's more reflective of the host of the show.
Retweeting is not condoning.
Man, so we really are very excited to have you on because, Mike, something that just kind of organically came out in our conversation on Best Darn Diddley when we were talking about Springfield Confidential. We were talking about this a little bit with Matt, as I heard here in the topic or in the chat earlier. You guys kind of came together to write this book that turned out to be not at all the project that you started. And I would really like to hear more about how you guys came together and how you guys kind of became partners in writing, it seems.
Yeah. I'll start it off. But Matt was a guy, I think it's funny because I don't even know how he got hold of me in the first place, but he's doing his Nickelodeon book and he got me on the phone, and then he would call anytime he needed kind of a Simpsons quote. Sometimes it would be like, what does Dr. Hibbert think of Obamacare? But then it would be, what does Milhouse think of nuclear disarmament. It was just every time he had to fill out a column, he'd call me, and it's great. Always fun to talk to, and good writer. So, so then I'll never forget this moment. I remember where I was. I was in a cigar store in Cambridge, Mass, when Matt called with this idea to do sort of Mike Reiss's America. I don't know what it was called. He goes, you and me, we're going to get in a car. We're going to drive all over America. You're going to give speeches, and that's going to be the book of Mike Reiss's America. And I always say, since my mother told me, always take rides from strangers.
Solid advice.
I said,
I offered her candy.
We said, let's do it. And so that was the book we set off to write. And, you know, I forget what came where, because Matt, he lived with us for a while, my wife and I, and we went to visit Harvard, and I showed him where I met my wife and took him through the Harvard Lampoon. He was really getting the whole background on me. And I don't know, Matt, do you want to jump in on any point in this?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty accurate at this point. I knew Mike from before the Nickelodeon book, Slime and Oral History of Nickelodeon's Golden Age, out through Penguin Random House, came out.
Shameless.
I was doing a series of articles for what was at one point Splitsider, which is now was absorbed into Vulture, like every other media company is being absorbed by every other media company. And I did a piece on Ren and Stimpy, and I wanted, because I knew I wouldn't get John Crispolucci or some of the other top people there at that point in working on the book. I got them later, but while I was just doing these articles for free for a website, I wanted to do something a little different. So I thought I would talk to different people in the animation world about Ren and Stimpy. And I knew that Mike had been involved with his partner, Al Jean, who's been running the show since 2001, The Simpsons, that it was part of some of the episodes in particular that kind of poked some fun at Ren and Stimpy or whatnot. So in addition to just his cachet on the staff and the show, I thought he would be an ideal person to talk about Ren and Stimpy. And yeah, I honestly also, Mike, it's true. I don't remember how I got your number. I don't remember how this was well before like Facebook and such, which I don't really engage in on it anyway. I really don't remember how I got Mike's number. What I do remember is I was walking out of a bar drunk at night in Boulder, Colorado, while it was snowing. And suddenly it was Mike saying, Matt Klickstein, it's Mike Reiss. I'm in an airport. I've got 15 minutes. What do you need to talk to me about? Scrambled in my pockets, in the snow, drunk, so I could write down notes.
Did you take about 12 minutes of technical difficulties to get to the 3 minutes of conversation?
That was my first conversation with Mike Reiss, was like stumbling in the snow drunk, trying to ask him about Ren and Stimpy. And to his credit, to repay the compliment, he was really professional and nice, and I could tell he was sort of in a hurry at the airport, and Mike's always traveling with Denise, and he answered my questions. He gave me some great material, and yes, as Mike said, he allowed me to pester him for the next few years. Anytime I needed something about The Simpsons or whatever, I would hit him up. And then finally, I decided we should do this book, and Mike's right. It was going to be Mike Reiss's America, very much like the David Foster Wallace project.
That's right.
Yeah, and which the movie was based on. I just thought that would be a fun idea. It would be kind of our version of Huell Hauser, or Rick Steves, or Anthony Bourdain, but it would be with, you know, this great comedy writer. And yeah, Mike was always doing tours and speeches and such, so that would kind of give him something to do. And then we would go to coffee shops or restaurants or Mall of America or Berkeley or whatever, and he would poke some fun at it, and I would kind of help, you know, sort of form the thing. And then that's what we were going to do. And yeah, he's right. I stayed with him. The first time I met Mike, he let me stay in his apartment. Wow. And then we went to Harvard together, and he showed me the Harvard Lampoon, you know, space and everything else. And I basically Boswelled him out for months. And we were going to do this thing. And then HarperCollins got involved and decided to make it into a book about The Simpsons instead. Yeah, which is not what either of us wanted to do, but they offered us money, and then the rest went from there.
Perfect, Mike. A small tangent question for you: do you get like the VIP question or the VIP treatment when you walk onto Harvard campus at this point? Like, they like roll out the red carpet and like let you like just tour people wherever you want to go?
At the Harvard Lampoon, I'm always welcome, but it's just, especially if you're a member there or a former member, people, they don't know who I am. You know, I graduated. I could literally be the grandfather of current members of the Lampoon. They're always a very nice, welcoming bunch. You'd be surprised.
Very cool.
So I don't know how many things I have to add to Matt's discussion. First of all, I was not his first choice for the book. He wanted somebody else, somebody much more impressive for the book. He couldn't get him, or they didn't want him. I don't know if we want to say the name of the guy you wanted to do the book, but second, he didn't tell me, oh, this whole idea I had has already been done with David Foster Wallace. Third, he didn't mention that at the end of this tour, David Foster Wallace killed himself. So I think these are all germane points. What's really fun, I got to tell this story, is we did a book proposal. Matt did it because I didn't know. You know, Matt makes things happen. You know, he makes stuff happen, and he put together this very nice book proposal, and he got us the meetings. And the first meeting, I'll name them. We went to Simon and Schuster, and we walk into the meeting, and the executive there looks like J.K. Simmons in Whiplash. He just looked like a human bullet. We walk in, you know, the man had invited us in, and we walk in, and he's already furious at us. And he just, if I can curse on this, he just,
go right ahead.
He goes, he's looking at me, he goes, who the fuck are you? Who the fuck are you? Why would anyone want this book? You're not Tina Fey.
You're not Tina Fey. He did say that. I will never forget that. He really said you're not Tina Fey.
You're not my bossy pants.
That's it. You know, I had walked, because it was great, because I woke up that morning and I thought I was Tina Fey. So
he really set Mike straight.
He just chewed. And again, he had invited us to this meeting. So I go, all right, all right. But, you know, Matt, to his credit, said, I think I can make something out of this. And he went into full pitch mode, and I knew it wasn't going to work. And finally, I just pulled him out of there. It felt like if that guy could have kicked us in the ass and booted us out like an old Blondie cartoon, he would have. But so that was it. We got that treatment, and we get in a cab, and we go downtown to HarperCollins, where they could not have been more welcoming. It was the complete opposite experience. But what we learned from that meeting was, you know, we went in with Mike Reiss's America, and they just had 3 hours of Simpsons questions. It just went on and on and on. And
it was like the whole company. There was like 20 people at the table.
Right. And that was, I walked out of there, I think, pretty much saying, this is the book they want. You know, let's forget it. Let's not get in a car. Let's not go anywhere. They want a Simpsons book. And that's how it happened.
I do need to respond a little bit. First of all, it's funny you remembered that part, Mike, about there was someone else first. For a moment, I was like, that's not true. But you know what? I forget. You remember that. You're right. There was someone else, but I didn't really know that other person very well.
Oh.
A lot of the idea came from, I ended up, I was working for the Baltimore Jewish Times at the time. I would actually drive up to Mike's place in New York and drive down. It was like a few-hour drive there and come back. It's one of the reasons I would stay at his place. And I had just interviewed someone who, if you can believe it, he was a comedian, he was a comedy person, he was a writer, he had worked in film and television just like Mike, and just like Mike was also Jewish. Very coincidental. I had interviewed him for the Baltimore Jewish Times, and he was a very nuanced person, and I thought that would be a good idea. My agent, though, said, you know, that he wasn't a big enough name or whatever. And when I brought up Mike instead, like Simpsons guy, the dollar signs lit up. So Mike actually did beat the other guy. But I will say, and I know, Mike, you've said this a few other times before, I really believe I told you about the David Foster Wallace thing, because like that was part of my pitch. It was like, this has been done before. We can do this. Trust. And you know me, Mike, I'm always throwing around pop culture references. I think it makes me sound smart. So I'm pretty sure, I know you said before that you learned afterwards about it, but I'm pretty sure I told you up front that it was a David Foster Wallace thing. The other thing that I think is really funny is Mike's 100% right. Like, you know, I had spent like a year and a half putting together this goddamn proposal, all these different versions. I'd been driving up and down to Mike's place in New York, and believe it or not, writing for the Baltimore Jewish Times did not pay well. So there were a few times, literally, Mike doesn't even know this, there were a few times I had to like borrow money from friends to get gas to come back down. Like I put a lot into this damn proposal. And so when my agent finally got us not one, but two actual meetings, it was like, finally, we're going to sell this damn thing, and I don't have to live in this on the street with my poor wife in a cardboard box. We go there, and it's going to be Simon & Schuster, HarperCollins. Hooray, the two big guys. So we go to the Simon & Schuster meeting. Mike's 100% right. I to this day, I don't know why the guy had the meeting. Maybe he had a hidden camera or something. He basically brought us in to tell us what idiots we were and how this would never work out and get the fuck out of my office. I like to think
that's just how he gets off. Like, he just has one of those meetings a day just to I'm going to get out all the frustration.
He was the Kevin Spacey character from Swimming with Sharks. There was no reason for him to have the meeting. He just and Mike's right. I started flailing and trying to pitch like I am right now because I put a year and a half to this fucking thing, and I've got Mike Reiss sitting next to me. I didn't want to waste his time. And then we get in a cab, we go to HarperCollins, and they're like, please come to us. Here's all the reasons why. Red carpet, the whole goddamn company came out. I think, Mike, you might not remember this, but I think Mike and I started walking to the bathroom at the same time afterwards and basically just turned to each other and started laughing because it was just like, what a crazy industry. How you can go from one side of the town to the other, and it's completely different experiences. But yeah, they did ultimately turn it into a Simpsons book, though, but oh well.
Yeah.
So that
was, the whole reason I'm doing this podcast is just to show people this is how books are made. It's the crazy stories behind how a book is made, how pretty much anything is made. But if Matt had called me a year before and said, Mike, I want you to write a Simpsons book, or we're going to write a Simpsons book together, I would have said, no way. I never would have done it. And I would have said, who am I to presume to write a Simpsons book? You know, anyone at the show has the right to write it, and I'd have to clear it with everyone. But it was the fact that we took this kind of tortuous path to getting there is the only reason the book happened.
I can confirm that it's still just as bad. The publishing industry is just a terrible series of one nightmare after another. There's a very good reason that throughout our illustrious history of fellow authors, most of them were drunks who either killed themselves or died by their early 40s.
Yeah. Do you think there's any chance the two are working together and the one like really breaks you down, so you're just willing to do whatever the second one says? They knew you didn't want to do the Simpsons books. So they're like, well, we'll get them ready to say yes.
Yeah, good job. I didn't catch what you were saying first. You might be right. Maybe they were good.
Interesting.
The amazing footnote to this is this bad meeting was at Simon & Schuster. I'm a Simon & Schuster author. I've published 3 books with them, 3 children's books. I'm not like some jerk off the street. I work for them. And so I was telling my other guy at Simon & Schuster, I said, I just had the weirdest meeting. The guy just yelled at me and kept telling me I'm not Tina Fey. And he said, oh, it was so-and-so. He knew exactly who I was talking about. So there's one nut there at Simon & Schuster who's the reason the whole publishing industry is going down the tube.
I think actually, you know what, Mike, you might, I hate to give another repost again. I think you're wrong about that, though. I don't think he's at Simon & Schuster anymore. I think he's at that video blog thing that we were just trying to use.
Yeah, I'm not sure which platform you're talking about.
No.
Yeah. Whatever gave you trouble earlier in your day, you should really get that.
I can't even remember the name of the damn thing. That was anyway.
So we did talk a little bit earlier before we started recording in the bad times. But Mike, do you see there being any possibilities, assuming the world opens up again? Do you still think that Mike Reiss's America is on the table? Is that something you would pursue?
I pursued something similar since, I finished this book, we finished this book, and I said, there's a book I wanted to write, which is about my travels. I've been to, I think Matt has mentioned, I've been to 130 countries. I've been to the North Pole and the South Pole. And so Springfield Confidential came out. It was a bestseller. It's been translated in all these languages. So I said, all right, let me write a travel book about all these places I've been in the style of Springfield Confidential. And I wrote that. That's been a proposal. I've sent it everywhere. Nobody wants it. I would have thought, oh, maybe I would have had a little leg up having Springfield Confidential under my belt. But no, nobody is interested in this travel book I'm trying to sell. So
there was also, I don't know how much we can talk about it, Mike, or if I should be spilling the beans at all, but I would imagine it's okay. Even when we were working on Springfield Confidential, there was a team that wanted to do it as a similar idea as a TV series, right? Were you allowed to mention that? I mean, I thought it was. Sure. What?
Yeah, it's no problem. Yeah, my wife and I were also. We had producers behind us. We cut a demo.
It was real. It looked good. It looked real.
Yeah, my wife and I are a funny couple. I make jokes, and she's very glamorous and dresses up, and it's a funny dynamic because I've been to 130 countries. I don't want to fucking go to any of them. I don't want to go any place. I've been so happy during lockdown, and I don't know. I think it's a funny dynamic. We make videos about our travels, and we tried to sell a travel show, and that did not work either.
So I've watched some of those videos on your wife's YouTube channel. Is it basically the TV show idea, like kind of just filling that concept out a bit more?
Exactly. It's like a comedy version of Somebody Feed Phil.
So, Mike, another thing that you talk about quite a bit, you make a joke about it in Springfield Confidential, and I've heard you mention it in a few interviews. You always say how if there's anything that's going to get you fired, even more than accidentally leaking the Simpsons movie, it would be this book. Has there been any backlash at all since you've released it?
Yeah, has there? I don't even know.
Yes, I got to say, I like saying it in front of Matt and in front of, the millions of listeners you have right now, which is, this was a project, there's been no downside to it. I mean, which is unique among any experience I've ever had. It was fun doing the book with Matt. It came out. Everybody liked it. The fans are happy. Simpsons fans, as you know, are very hard to please. They love the book.
I was scared.
Yeah, they're really happy about the book. I got to tell this story. I always like to say we got no bad reviews on the book. And in fact, it's not true in that we got one bad review out of hundreds, international reviews. The AV Club gave it, I think, a B- or a C-.
Surprise!
Yeah, they gave it a terrible review. And then 2 pages later, in the same issue, they named it one of the best books of the month. So that's the AV Club. I think
you were at the top of a very slow class. It sounds like.
That's it. Their grade is B-. So.
Mike's also leaving out. There was one very angry Amazon reviewer who just hated all the references we made to Kathy Griffin.
No, that's it. It just worked out really nicely. The Simpsons writers were all very nice. What's weird and ominous is the book is dedicated to Matt Groening and Jim Brooks, and I gave them copies, and I've never heard a word. They've never mentioned the book. But everyone else at the show was very nice and supportive, and nobody ever said, "Who are you to be writing this book?" or anything like that.
So during the writing process, I was actually wanting to ask too, I know that you're very good friends with your former, I guess he's still your writing partner, Al Jean, who's still show running the Simpsons currently. Was there ever something that you were planning to talk about where Al gave you like dude, what are you thinking? You can't do that.
No, he asked in advance. He said, "Can I see the book?" He said, because I know there's going to be questions to me and I want to know what to talk about. So I sent him the book. Can you still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I sent him the book and he just wrote back, it's great, which was really, really sweet. And Al, I mean, he's my friend, but he's a tough guy to please.
He is a tough guy to please, and he sent me a very nice email too around that same time, just totally out of the blue. Al sent me just the longest email. I mean, we actually talk every now and then. He's very responsive. There's sometimes I'm like, why are you talking to me? Don't you have a show to run right now? I'll just be like, hey, Al, I saw the newest episode. It's great. And he'll like, thank you. But he sent me a very long email explaining why he liked it so much, just kind of out of the blue. I didn't ask for it. I didn't, know that Mike had showed it to him. So Al clearly enjoyed it at least enough, not only to compliment Mike, but to make sure I knew as well that he really liked it. And that was a great moment, like everyone else watching this, the 6 or 7 people maybe. I grew up on the show, and that was something that was very special about this for me too, was just a lot of my sense of humor and my perspective on the world, my cynicism, my weight, all Mike really fucked up my life.
Yeah, actually, thanks, Mike. It's just your fault.
There was a learning thing coming. I think it's briefly mentioned in the book, and then when the book came out, I got a call from an Israeli book reviewer, and he's going, "Where is the dirt?" And I go, "There's no dirt." He goes, there must be something. You wrote this. You are bitter. I go, "I'm not bitter." And, but it was after 30 years on The Simpsons, it's where I realized, oh, it's a nice place. There really is no dirt. There's no friction there. Everybody respects each other. Everyone gets along. That people were so supportive of the book when it came out. I just go, oh, this is at least one of the reasons the show has run for 30 years. It's a pleasant place to be. I think it comes across. It's a warm environment. And I read Eric Idle's book about Monty Python. It was the same thing. There's, those guys spent 50 years together. No fights, no friction. Everyone respected each other.
Except for Terry Gilliam and John Cleese, right?
Right. That's the one thing.
That was the one thing. Yeah. I can actually confirm what Mike's saying. I was dream come true moment. I got to go to the writer's room and meet some people, and it was quiet and kind of boring, and just a bunch of old guys sitting around talking, chatting, leaning in their chairs. He brings us up in the book. I could not believe how ramshackle and disheveled the room was. Here it is, the guys who run the longest running show on television, and Fox can't even give them a nice office to work in. And, it felt like I was in some insurance office somewhere outside of Phoenix, Arizona. This is The Simpsons, Jesus. And so...
Is there a sign that says, "Don't forget you'll be here forever"?
Exactly. Yeah, everyone there gets the plague or the plaque. But no, and everyone was really friendly to me. I mean, I just kind of walked in. I don't even know if Mike knew I was coming in. I think Denise brought me in or someone else, and I think it was a surprise to him. And everyone was very friendly, very nice. There was a gentleman there from China who was pitching some project or something that was separate and started talking about Chinese food. I think he talked about Chinese food in China for about an hour. And I remember people afterwards going, "Matt, what was it like in the Simpsons writers' room?" And I said, "Well, I learned a lot about Chinese food from China, actual Chinese food in China."
I believe they just call it food there.
Yeah, no one stopped the guy from talking. No one said, "Hey, we're busy," or "Get the hell out of here." Everyone was kind of shrugging their shoulders, another day at The Simpsons. So
that is so funny. Yeah, that guy was crazy.
It's funny to hear that it's just such a mundane thing, but it sounds like quite the upgrade from the trailer that they gave you in season 1, right?
Yes, we were in a trailer for the first. That's what The Simpsons was created in, and it wasn't just a trailer. It was, I'm thinking back on it because it was cheap wood paneling and brown shag carpeting. So it was clearly, it had been shooting porn there before we got there.
An explicit no black light rule.
Yeah.
It was a velvet Jesus on the wall, right?
So you two have clearly got a nice dynamic going. It seems like you even have a friendship. I mean, hell, you're practically roommates, it sounds like. Is there another project that you guys have talked about, like maybe a side project or passion project, anything that you two have that you're
I'm constantly bugging Mike and Al and everyone I've ever met who's famous to please let me do something else with them. I need to eat. I'm so hungry. My baby needs medicine. Please.
Let me get some sweet Simpsons
Save
pie.
me from my obscurity. Mike and I have talked about stuff. I have pitched him some things. One thing I really like about Mike, and it really is true of Al too, is they're very honest and they're very quick with their responses and thoughtful about it. And I know when Mike pays me a compliment about something, maybe I'll show him that I did, and he's complimentary about it, that he really means it. And if he doesn't like it, he either doesn't respond or he tells me why he thinks it sucks. And I really appreciate it. I really do. I think it's really important. And, we've talked about a few things over the years, but, we kind of do our own things at our own times these days. So, we still talk quite a lot. I'm always throwing him stupid jokes and, articles about me that make me feel good about myself. He's like a surrogate, aunt or something like that. Mike's like
Auntie Mike.
Auntie Mike. Yeah, exactly. No, I look up to the guy, and what can I say? I mean, I like to kind of show him I'm still doing these things, or try to connect him to stuff like this or whatever I can do. I'm always trying to pitch the book at things or talk about it at different events I go to and whatnot. I'm proud of it. I'm proud that I'm friends with Mike Reiss and Al Jean. It's cool. It makes me feel good. And they are smart, good guys who give me advice and who are very honest when I send them things to look at. They give me feedback. Mike's read scripts of mine and, broken them down and told me what he likes about them or doesn't like about them. And, I appreciate it. I really do. Even when he's like, this is a fucking piece of shit, throw it in the trash. It's nice. It's rare to find stuff like that in Hollywood. It really is.
Mike's like, it's funny you should say that. I've been meaning to get back to you on this one.
No, I was so mean to Matt about one screenplay he sent me. He doesn't know, though. I mean, I try to be honest and helpful, but it's also a function of how much stuff is being sent to you. During lockdown, anyone I've ever met and many people I've never met are just sending me things. I think this is just what we're all doing. They're sending. So I was getting screenplays every day from everyone, and it just broke down any veneer of civility I had. And I was writing a few, this is garbage. How can you show this to people? So Matt knows I can be very honest. I can be very brutal. And when I say something nice to him, I really mean it.
Sincerity is an important quality. I like that for sure.
I do have to say one other thing. When I said that's why I left LA, to his credit, Mike's not in LA. Mike's in New York, where yes, right. They stab you in the front, not in the back.
A much more honest situation.
Right. Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story and answer your question. About 15 years ago, Al Jean and I got a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Animation Writers Caucus. The animation writers of Hollywood gave us a Lifetime Achievement Award. It was one of the great nights of my life. And then the next morning I woke up and I thought, I wish I was dead. I never feel like that. And I call up Al, I go, Al, how you doing today? He said, I feel like I died. And
wow.
It's something you don't know till you get sort of some life summation award or recognition that you go, well, your life is over now. What's the point? And that's sort of, not in a bad way, but that's what doing this book has done for me too, which is, Matt's got 15 other projects going. I wrote, Springfield, I wrote the story of my life, Springfield Confidential, and suddenly I go, well, what's the point of doing anything else? So he's got his whole career in front of him. I feel like, well, just roll me into my grave anytime.
Actually, if I may, there was a part, I can't remember if we even mentioned this at all in the actual version of the book that came out, but one of the ways that I had originally envisioned ending it was kind of a funny story about Mike, you and Denise actually applied to be a couple that was going to go to Mars, right? And you even got like Neil deGrasse Tyson to write your recommendation. Whoa. You thought like that would sort of be how you would end things, kind of like the original ending of Carl Sagan's Contact, with the weird guy that's what he ended up doing. Like you basically just like fly in outer space like until you died, tweeting funny things about your travels or something. No?
Yes. Yeah, we did. And that whole mission never happened, but we made the first cut to go to Mars. I'm pretty proud of that.
Seems like not a bad time to hit the escape plan right now, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to do with Matt is, whenever The Simpsons turns 40 or 50, I feel like we could do an updated version of the book. There was just a handful of kind of fun stories that got cut out of the book that I'd love to put in, maybe some more pictures.
And you're still doing one day a week at The Simpsons, so there's still new stories being generated every week, right?
Absolutely. We're keeping up with the times. I think it's been big news that we're recasting all our, we're making sure that people of color on the show are played by people of color. And it's been nothing but fun. It's been sort of exciting meeting some new voice talent and seeing how much voice talent there is out there. And
like a whole new era to the show.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. It hasn't been a chore. It's nothing we've done grudgingly. It's been fun and just makes the show a little more interesting for us. Keeps it new.
I've been saying for a while, actually, that especially when I've had the opportunity to talk about The Simpsons or go around even for some solo things with the book, that, I'm sure Mike gets this a lot too, and I know Al does, but there's a lot of, after I'm done talking about, the show or talking about the book or whatever, showing some clips or something, there's always, hey, Matt, that was great, and thanks, like, I haven't watched the show in 10 years, or, wow, is the show still any good or anything? And I'm not just saying this as a fan and as a friend of Mike's, and now, very fortunately, Al and some of the other people involved, but I think that seasons 29 through where we're at now have been a real return to form. Mike knows this too. I think I brought it up multiple times, but I think it's the season premiere of 29, the Surfsons, where it was sort of one long Halloween episode where they're in the medieval times. I still go back to that episode because it's so well written. It's so funny. Every joke lands. It's got the kind of Mad Magazine aspect of Simpsons that we love, where everything in the back, you're constantly pausing it. Every sign, every label is funny. It really is such a great episode. And I would say something similar about the even more recently, the Thanksgiving of Horror episode. The segment with the turkeys, the goblin. I still bring that up to people. I go, if you want to see how good The Simpsons still is, how they are topping themselves, you have to see the turkey segment of Thanksgiving House of Horrors or whatever it was actually called, because there's no dialogue. It's just turkeys talking, and you know who the characters are based on the inflections. And that's, as Mike said, that's where the voice talent comes into play, the direction comes into play, the writing comes into play. Everything comes together, and that doesn't happen except at The Simpsons, where people have been there together for 15 years or more. And they could do a segment of an episode where the characters are just saying gobble, gobble the whole time. And it tells the story, and it resolves itself all within, 7 minutes or whatever the segment was. But, it's still going strong so much to this day. And, I would tell people, even who are watching this, who are like, oh, maybe I should watch again. The last few seasons really are, amazing. They really are. They really are.
Thanks. And I agree. I mean, because I feel like I can judge the show sort of objectively because I'm just such a tiny part of it. I'm one of 20 writers.
They were all good except 6 and 7,
day
right?
a week. But that's it. Our last season in particular, we're all going, wow, what are we doing right here? It was a really good year, and I think the season before, we won our first Emmy in 12 years. We won Best Animated Show, and we were always nominated, but we had a 12-year dry spell, and then we won it, and we deserved it. It was a really good episode we had put up for consideration. So, yeah, we see it with SNL, too. I mean, that's a show that makes us look young. I don't know what they're in, like season 45. And
for a while.
Suddenly, lately, I guess under Trump, they're relevant and interesting, and you want to hear what's SNL's take on what's going on in the news. So,
we just reviewed the Dish Upon a Star, where Alec Baldwin was actually the guest on The Simpsons. And at that time, he was relevant for movies. now if you watch that, you'd be like, why is the guy that does the Trump impersonation a movie star? Like, it's completely changed. Mike, I wanted to ask you, and Matt as well, but kind of the same question in different phases. Matt, for you, like before you wrote Springfield Confidential, for Mike, I want you to go back even further. And when you first started writing for The Simpsons, what's like the one piece of advice that you would give your past self?
My past self? One thing, it even goes back to Harvard Lampoon. I go all the way back there, which is, you got to be funny to work in comedy, but you also got to work really hard. It's not one or the other. And I realize that with athletes too. You know, there are always great high school athletes and people who are naturally gifted. And then there are guys who are really hustle, who focus a lot. But the professionals are the people with a lot of natural talent who work really, really hard. And that's it with comedy. You think, and it's sort of a weird business in that you go in there and you think, well, this is fun and we're all going to make each other laugh. And there is the part of it, you have to be very relaxed to do it and be very casual. But at the same time, you got to have kind of this laser-like focus and remember, this is a job. How's that?
That's great. Yeah, no, I think that's really solid advice. I see that all the time with people that show up at open mics and they're like, I'm going to be famous. And it's just like, it takes a little bit more than that. Yeah. What about you, Matt?
Well, first off, something Mike said, and I'm not trying to be too much of a lick spittle here, if you will. But one thing that I noticed when I was spending more time with Mike, really, as he put it, and I think you were just saying it too, more or less, Miles, is there's such a difference between someone who thinks he's funny or she's funny and someone who does it as a professional or just has this innate talent the way that Mike does. I think like yourself, Miles, and I know certainly Mike, I have spent a lot of my life and time around other people who are trying to be funny, even people who are pretty funny. I got into stand-up comedy myself for a little bit when I was living in a small town and there was a bit of a comedy scene, and they just happened to be my friends. They sort of dragged me on and I started doing it a little bit and they were all trying to do it. And it just, as hard as they worked at it and whatnot, you can tell that a lot of them weren't really that funny inherently. Mike is a professional on a level where it's just different. It would be the same as playing basketball with a friend of yours who's really good and maybe was great in high school, but is not Kobe Bryant or, the late Kobe Bryant or LeBron James or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just different. And there'll be times when I'll be sitting with Mike, just how fast he thinks and how funny it is almost every time. It really is, it's miraculous. Like you just sit there and you go, this guy should do this for a living. This guy's the real deal. He knows this too, and he sometimes says, I saw you yawning or whatever, but I've seen his speech, which is pretty similar that he does about The Simpsons, probably about 50 times. And yeah, sometimes I'm a little tired because we're running around and traveling and such, and I've told him this, I'm always learning from him about his delivery and the pacing and what he is saying and how he maybe plays with if someone's talking or something like that, or how he answers questions during the Q&A. And it's a different level. There was one other person, I'm not even going to say her name because she was from the other show, South Park, but one thing I would do with her, who was a writer on South Park, we would go and see bad movies intentionally, and she would basically heckle them like Mystery Science Theater 3000. And I swear to you, I would basically just turn in my chair and watch her. And that was the entertainment. I don't even think anyone around us minded, because when your friends are drunk or stoned at a movie and you're doing that, it's annoying and obnoxious. I think even other people in the theater could tell this person's like, let's watch her, she's funny. And we're all watching a bad movie anyway.
Right.
It's Chronicles of Riddick or White Chicks or whatever the hell it was specifically go to. So there just is a professionalism that's there that is it's just different. It's just different. Someone who sings really well or likes it versus Whitney Houston or a Dolly Parton or a Beyonce or whomever, where it's just, there's a different quality. And Mike absolutely imbues that. And it was really cool to be around him and to kind of see that work when he'd be talking with somebody or just he'd be talking with me. He couldn't help himself. He writes about it in the book. He can't help but be funny. It's just what he does. And I pulled, just to wrap this up, I'm not going to keep going, but I pulled a line from him because it's true. He says this in his speech. He says it in the book. Someone asked me the other day how I get inspired to write. And I said, I don't get inspired to write. I write because I write. It's a job and it's what I need to do. And, you know, a plumber doesn't need to be inspired. You know, you don't ask a plumber how he gets inspired. A plumber just does his job. And I might not be nearly as funny as Mike, but I think I'm a pretty good writer, and I do a lot of different writing, and it's the same thing. It really is just like, what inspires me? Getting paid. What inspires me? A deadline. You know, I love doing it. I love it.
Putting on that Simpsons weight.
I just feel grateful that I can do it sort of for a living, kind of. And that it's something that I'm pretty good at and that I love doing, and I get to meet people like Mike and now Miles and some of the other people that I've gotten to know. So I guess what that's all coming to is what I would tell my former self is probably not to worry so much and not be so neurotic and nervous, but because things will work out, I guess. You know, it's hard times, especially right now. It's hard times being a working class writer, as I like to put it. But, you know, basically you just got to keep going and do it. And I can't do anything else. I've tried. I really can't. All I can do is write and occasionally produce shit. And I just feel lucky that every now and then someone like a Mike Reiss or other people that I've gotten to know over the years have helped me out or have let me work with them or let me write a book about them or whatever it might be. And that we're still friends to this day. I've known Mike now for 10 years. I mean,
wow.
Yeah, every time I go to New York, I stay at his apartment with Denise, and, you know, and they're my friends. I mean, they're like family almost. They know my wife knows them. I know some of their other friends that I've met multiple times. And, you know, I just feel really grateful that can happen. So I tell my former self, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Very good. I think that's good advice across the board,
That's
both
great.
to work hard and to not be too hard on yourself. And so many ways. That's excellent. All right, guys, I sure hope that you guys continue working together. I love this book. I think you guys have a really, really great dynamic. And I can't thank you enough for coming on and dealing with all of the bullshit that we had to deal with to have this conversation. It really means a lot to hear you say that you like our podcast because we like your work so much. And that is far better than any top 20 podcast list in our eyes. At least that's what I tell myself to keep, you know, myself on this planet.
Well, I actually wanted to ask Mike real quick before we go. One of my favorite parts, and I don't get on Twitter as much as I used to, but you're one of the few things I very much enjoy on Twitter with all of your political talk, I'll say, and then also your reviews on movies. I know movies aren't really coming out in theaters right now, but I love reading your tweets about new movies and how much you hate them. I wanted to.
Mike really hates movies.
When is the last time you saw a movie that you liked?
All movies equally. Yes.
I wanted to know, is there during quarantine, is there a movie that you've been watching or a series you've been watching that you've actually enjoyed that you would recommend?
I'll go all out. Well, I'm going to say something crazy. I haven't found a platform to lay this out or to find someone who will share my opinion, which is, and it's going to sound like a joke, I watched the Human Centipede trilogy. I watched the three, and I think it's something so special. I think there's nothing like, and this is the problem. You're laughing. I mean, I really think it's, and they're not even all good movies, but he's done something so amazing there. I'm a huge fan of, I think his name is Tom Six, who made the Human Centipede trilogy. It's just, all right, I already regret saying it.
The use of color in that third movie is disturbing. Like, it haunts my memories.
Oh, okay. So you've been there too. I mean, it's the idea.
We've all seen it, Mike.
Yeah, you're not alone on that.
I'm there with you, buddy.
It was just so eye-opening to me. The three movies are all Human Centipede movies and completely different genres. Completely, and I go, nobody's done that. You know, we can love the Godfather trilogy or the first three Star Wars or whatever. Nobody made three completely different movies like that. And I think that's something so bold and amazing. So that's my take. I will say, Matt knows too, I don't think it's in the book, what a notorious cheapskate I am. So I spent lockdown just doing free trials of different streaming services.
Nice.
So that was it. I had Netflix for a month, and I told my wife, our job is to watch everything on Netflix in a month. And we moved on to Showtime and HBO. And It was all okay. And then we hit Shudder, and Shudder is the one I said, I'll pay for Shudder. So we're enjoying that. That's
Very cool. I love Shudder. Shudder is an awesome service.
Yeah.
Very cool. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. It was really cool having you. And again, I appreciate your patience. And, you know, down the road, we'll get our head out of our asses and love to have you back on with a less technically problematic conversation if you guys do ever decide you want to make something, or if you just have the desire to come on and chat The Simpsons with us.
I love that you use the word problematic literally rather than, as so many people do these days, metaphorically. I have to do a little promo.
Go right ahead, yeah,
because I think
please.
it's important. I agree that, and Mike knows this, I'm actually not on Twitter. I'm one of the 80+% of Americans not on Twitter. 80% plus not on Twitter. But I do still look at Mike Reiss's Twitter page pretty frequently. Just I go on there and just look without logging in since I don't have an account. Because he's the only person that I don't necessarily follow because I'm not on Twitter, but I look at it because he really does just give you the goods. If you're a Simpsons fan or a critic fan or a fan of comedy, I highly recommend Mike Reiss's Twitter page. It is literally the only thing that I look at on Twitter.
Oh,
it's funny, it's smart, and I agree also he does have really good insight in movies. I hit him up every now and then. We'll say, like, what'd you think of this movie? I can't wait to hear what you have to say about such and such movie. And he does recommend strange movies. He's the one who got me to see Climax, the Gaspar Noé film that is just this crazy, weird, extreme film. And you know, I had given up on Gaspar because he made Irreversible, he made Love, he made a few other films that, you know, I thought were all right, but I wasn't going to see Climax. I'm so glad I did, and it was because Mike, it was like one of his favorite movies. And yeah, like Human Centipede, it was this crazy extreme film. So I think what we need to do, gang, is get a petition.com going for Mike Reiss to do a horror film. I think that's where we're going.
Hell yes.
John Krasinski can do it. Jordan Peele can do it. The comedy guys are going horror. Mike Reiss can do horror.
Okay.
I think that'd be fascinating. And there's so much fun crossover there. Maybe that's the next project, guys. Yeah, get on Twitter at Mike Reiss Writer and let him know how much you want to see a horror movie while you're looking at his movie reviews that are really just him shredding on pop culture.
The co-creator of The Critic. What a surprise.
Yeah, right?
For some reason doesn't like Tina Fey.
You look nothing like her, to be fair.
Oh, thanks.
No, guys, thank you again so much. This was really great. And I wish both of you the best of luck. Keep making great Simpsons episodes. And Matt, you keep making literally just everything. Like every project you can tip your finger into.
Exactly.
Amazing, man. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you guys so much.
I'm so glad it all worked out. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Mike.